During the video, you might notice my hands moving around once in a while, my brush pointing at the painting. That's because during the full-length, almost 2-hour-long video, I offer a lot more instruction, which of course you can find on our website at masteroilpainting.com. I cut out as much as I could, but there's still little remnants of it. So, enjoy the video. Here is a pic of my palette and the brushes that, for the most part, that I use on a consistent basis. For more information on each of these, just go to the end of the video and I'll have more there for you. And here are a couple of reference photos of roses that I took one summer and a couple of my older paintings. One is a piece that I did on location, plein air, and the other is a small rose that I did here in my studio. I want to get some of that variety of color temperature change that we talk so much about, especially in the very beginning, if I can, to help invigorate things right from the start. And I want this all to be very loose so that it has no set definition to it. So nobody can come in and say, oh, I know exactly what that is. This gives some ambiguity, a little bit of mystery, and that is part of the storytelling that we do as artists. We don't spell out necessarily every little detail. Got to leave some drama, some mystery in there for the viewer. So if I want to get a nice clean line going up out of the middle of the flower, I push up through. But to a great extent, I'm not too concerned about leaving any of the colors that are around it inside the flower, because much of those colors are going to be reflecting into the colors of that flower. So having some of this on the edge, first of all, it softens the edge of those petals, so that if I really want a sharp-edged petal, I can come in with thicker paint, or I can cut into it later with another brush or something to create that hard edge. But when I'm working with the paper towel, it's nice to get some soft edge in here so that I have those soft edges to work with. So I don't have to worry about getting all of that color wiped out of there in the early stages of my work. Sun-kissed is a great example of what I can do with some of the colors in those roses. You notice how I turn that brush right around so that I don't get that red. That when I did that stroke, it has to be quick and decisive, because I'm going to get that paint on there. If I try to go back in and mess with it, all of that's going to blend together and it's just going to become a blended stroke. I do not want that. I want these to be, when it comes to translucent flowers, I'm working with clean color. Has to be done in a stroke and then left. So I'm cutting in back into these petals here to try to create a much nicer shape with that flower rather than continually expanding out. Sometimes we just need to cut back into it. So this is how I can play with some of the background colors, get some of that brightness back in here without getting the actual opaque paint disrupting it. So to do that, I just came in with the brush that I was using. That's that badger. It's kind of the mongoose, what used to be the mongoose hair. And Rosemary's created it so that it has the same overall feeling of the old mongoose brushes. So this is the Long Flat Series 279. So I had all that color from doing the flower up here, and then I just came in with some of that opaque paint on there, and then moved it around so that it didn't feel like a blob of opaque paint on it. I wanted to feel more like the background that was already there. And then just kind of move the bristles around in here to get back that texture, the same feeling that I have in the rest. So remember, we want to have the ability to recreate any part of our painting, whether it's a quickly sketched in background or any of the more refined areas that we're putting in. Sometimes with roses, I'll go in and really work up a leaf here and there, as much refinement almost as what I have in the rose. But other times, especially in a small piece, I want to keep them a little bit less refined so that they're just kind of a simple statement. Then they give all the appearance of leaves, but they're much more subtle and intimate feeling to really complement the sophistication that's here in the rose itself. And it helps to then leave a lot of the interest and the more complicated look to it in here in the flower. So simple versus complex. And then we have, of course, dark versus light and so on. So it's really contrasts is what a lot of that is. I think some of those darks were just too dark for me. It was creating such a strong contrast that it didn't feel as natural as the rest of the painting. And so I think I need to come in and soften some of that. I didn't want to get the stem too big and be unwieldy, you know, compared to the rose. So I wanted the rose to feel delicate, but you're right, it was spindly and dead looking, that stem.
Good job.
That's better?
Mm-hmm. Much better.
So hopefully this will help you, and you'll have a lot of fun with it. I sure did. I love painting roses. Get out there and paint your own rose masterpiece, and happy painting. My palette's pretty much staying consistent now. There are several colors that you'll see listed here that I don't use, and I have them marked like that. And then I have a warm and a cool of each of my colors for the most part. I wanted to address a lot of what's been going on with my experimenting with brushes. I'm really trying to find one company that I can work with, primarily at least, so that I can get, especially for the members of the community, I want to get everything narrowed down to as few companies as possible so that it makes it easy for all of you to order whatever it is that I might suggest. And in saying that, that's not to suggest that you need to use the materials that I use, but many of you want to know what I use and you want to use those same materials. And that I can understand that. That's how I began too, using the materials that my professors and those that I admired, that's what I looked for. I looked for their materials and I used those same brushes, the same paints, all of that for many years. And then after that, it's experimentation and really seeing what works for us. So I've been experimenting with a lot of different companies and brushes and and everything else that I can find to help narrow it down so that none of you have to order from this company this brush and from that company a different brush and over here another one. I really like the quality of rosemary brushes. They're built really well. I'm just having a little bit of trouble narrowing it down to the essential brushes that I can use on a consistent basis, especially to replace a lot of the Utrecht brushes that I used for so many years. So I still recommend the Utrecht brushes. They really are good brushes as well. They've lasted me for a long time. So if you have Utrecht or you have Grumbacher or any other brushes that are working well for you, use them. There's no sense in throwing something out that's working for you or in starting over. My main reason for experimenting as much as I am lately is just to try to get it down to one company if I can. After that, there are still a lot of little brushes that I use here and there that I might get from the hardware store, from, well, probably not Hobby Lobby, but you never know. They can come from all kinds of different sources. And in the past, I've even taken brushes and I've used scissors to chop into them and to try to get different textures and different effects from those brushes. So it's all about experimenting and discovering what really works for us as artists, as individual entities. We all have our different personalities, our different approaches, and really, even when we admire somebody else's art and we love what they do and how they do it, that doesn't mean that we want to copy what they do. When I admire an artist, I will buy their books, I'll buy their DVDs or whatever training materials they might have and try to learn as much as I can from them and glean those things from them that will help me to improve my own artwork. Or some technique that might be faster than what I'm doing, or a technique that might be more useful for a particular something that they paint that I really gravitate to. So if I can learn something from them, I'm going to take it and use it. But that doesn't mean that it's going to change entirely the way that I paint. That hasn't happened. So with these brushes, just know that it is a little bit of an ongoing process right now, trying to figure it out. So don't make some huge brush order based on what I'm using at this moment, because I still haven't finalized all that. Once I do, I will let all of you know what I recommend and why. Right now, there are several of the rosemary brushes that I like. The Eclipse comber that I recommended in the previous video, it ended up not working out for me. I won't be using it. For some reason, it must be the way that I use paint, but the bristles tend to kind of clump into little separate groups rather than individual bristles, and just doesn't work out for me. I like to have the individual bristles that I can see, that texture of those bristles. So for the most part right now, it's the main bristle brushes like the Utrecht 209s or the Rosemary Ultimates. I really like both of those brushes, and I like the mongoose brushes or the mongoose replacements like the Rosemary 279 series or the rounds in the I think they're made with badger hair now, so I like some of those replacements. Just experiment with all of it and do the best that you can to find those brushes that will really work for you, but do the experimenting like I'm doing right now. Just get out there and try a brush once in a while, but don't buy a lot of them. I ended up doing that with the rosemary ivory brushes because so many artists like them, but they don't work for my particular style of painting. They're excellent brushes. They seem to be very well built, but that technique I have, Rosemary mentioned that Kwang Ho does the same thing where we kind of push the brush forward with paint loaded on it, and that is what splays out the brushes. For some reason, the Utrecht 207s, they were a synthetic blend. They didn't seem to have the same problem. And by a synthetic blend, it means they had natural bristles combined with synthetic bristles, and that seemed to be a good combination that didn't splay nearly as quickly or as much as the Ivory series did. So the Ivory just isn't going to work for me. Plus, the full synthetic is just a little bit slick for the style that I do, the type of painting that I do. But they're still, at the same time, they're beautiful brushes. So it might work out for somebody else. So when you're deciding on brushes, just choose those brushes that are going to work really well for you. And I would suggest that you buy just one rather than the whole load of them that I bought when I bought the ivory brushes that now don't really work for me. I'll probably use them somewhere along the line and try to use them up, or I might not. But I have a lot of brushes that I've purchased that I might not ever actually use. And that's the nature of tools. Remember, these are just tools. There's nothing magical about them. The magic comes with our imagination and how we use it, the skills that we acquire. So tools are just tools. There's nothing critically important about our tools. So just find the ones that really work for you. When I get my brushes narrowed down, I'll try to have a set of them on my website so that they're easy for people to order and to make everything convenient. But I'm going to make sure before I put anything on the website that these really are a group of brushes that I'm going to use on a very consistent basis. Whether it's from Rosemary or Utrecht or from somebody else, I'll make sure that I've really settled on those brushes that I think are going to work in the long run.